Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 429. It's our Friday roundtable show where we have a panel of WordPress gurus, experts, or just freaks that love WordPress. And we're going to have a bit of a binge, and we're going to discuss some other stories not totally related to WordPress, but should be interesting to our audience. We've got a great panel. We've got a guest. She's coming back, was a former co-host of my interview show, and that's Kim Shivler. Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Kim Shivler. I'm a communications consultant. I help technical people communicate with non-technical audiences.
That is true. And we've got a new going to be on the show semi-regularly. That's Joe. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, my name's Joe Casabona. I am a developer, educator, and podcaster, in that order chronologically. And I do a lot of front-end development, and I love WordPress.
And we've got Adrian, my present co-host, that's doing a fantastic job in controlling me and the logic of the show.
I prefer to call it providing useful suggestions. Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I'm the CEO and founder of Groundhog. We build sales and marketing tools for WordPress.
He's been a great co-host and he's strengthened the show tremendously. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Sally Getch. I am the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California. And we are facing the need to come up with a backup topic on Sunday because our speaker is unfortunately ill. But we still want you to show up because we always have a great time talking about WordPress.
I got my friend, John Locke. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm John. I do SEO for manufacturing companies. Yeah,
there we go. All right, let's go into it. No, Jonathan. I've got to mention one of my great sponsors, and I've just had a total brain. God, let's go into
but besides Adrian's company, who's
it's either Breezy or Kinsta.
Breezy. Sorry,
there you go. Breezy Page Builder.
I apologize. I had a meltdown there.
We made it.
Yeah, we made it. I want to mention about breezy.co. What is Breezy? I think it's one of the most intuitive page builders on the market at the present moment. Now, let's face it, folks, there's about 4 in the running, but I think Breezy is one of the leaders. It's got a fantastic UX design and how it works, and it's got some functionality to it that if you're a consultant or developer looking at a page builder for your clients, you're going to be really interested in this product. So I suggest you should go over to breezy.com, look what they got to offer, buy it, and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. I didn't do a bad job there, did I, listeners and viewers? I recovered, didn't I?
Nice save.
Yes, thank you. So on to the first story, and I can't. How do you pronounce the first? Kioken. How do you
Kioken, I would say.
God, what a name!
Can confirm it's Kioken.
I'm going with Sally since her background is the classics. I have a feeling she can figure something like that out.
Kioken blocks. The new.
Well, I think this is probably Japanese or something, which I don't know, but phonetically, I would say Kioken.
Kioken. All right. Blocks. The new Street Fighter inspires block collections that's taking aim at page builders. Being that you could pronounce the name, Sally, what did you think of this?
I think that if they're naming things after a game, they might run into some trademark issues. However, apart from that question, it does seem interesting that they're actually doing something that other creators of block collections haven't, and trying to say, all right, what kind of blocks has nobody else created before? Because we already have, all right, here are 5 different choices for what your row column layout type block is like, or your container block is like, or your fancy heading block is like, or whatever. And this is sort of like, okay, well, what can we do that's a little bit different? So I like that idea. And I think this is, I haven't tried it yet. I think it's one that I will want to check out and say, what's in there. I did find it amusing that in this interview he said, if you've got an average knowledge of JavaScript, and I think you are taking the average of the wrong group of people.
Just a bloody bit. It's a bit. So, Kim, what did you think of this?
Mine was the same. Like when I first looked at it, I'm like, oh God, somebody else building some fancy blocks. When he said that he's doing the things that it's not just another accordion, another version of X, Y, and Z, that made me interested. I still haven't had time to look at it. You just sent me the links yesterday. Yeah. But, actually look at the product. But I liked the concept based on that, just like Sally did.
That's great. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think that we're going to see a lot of these kind of block collections emerge over the next couple of years or so. It's interesting that they're positioning themselves against page builders, because I haven't used this, but in my experience, Gutenberg itself is not a page builder. It's a lot like saying, I want to start an arena rock band in my apartment. You can try your very best, but you're going to have a lot of limitations, like noise ordinances. So I'm interested to try it out, but I am very skeptical at any block collection, any Gutenberg-based thing at this point that says we are the solution to page builders.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, it looks interesting. I'll probably check it out. Definitely, I'm glad to see more people creating blocks for Gutenberg, so there's a way forward for the average user. So I think it looks interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah. So what was Adrian? Sorry, Adrian.
Bloody hell. All right, there we go. Unmuted. They offer a unique value proposition by everybody's already echoed this. I mean, they do something that everybody else doesn't, so that's super cool. The nice thing that I like about the whole Gutenberg and the block collections is that since Gutenberg is agnostic, then that means you can have any variety of block collections installed at any given time. So you can have theirs, you can have co-blocks, atomic blocks, you can have them all installed at the same time and have access to all of their resources immediately just from the search bar in the Gutenberg builder. So that offers a unique value proposition if you are looking to go totally like vanilla WordPress, but you want all of those extra blocks at all of these different companies. Unlike a page builder, you don't have to settle down with one. You can essentially get all of the block collections that you want and add them to your site. So that's a unique value proposition that it does offer at the moment if you're going full vanilla WordPress.
Right, that's great. On to the next story. Uber vows to fight California legislation and go on the gig economy. And I think you placed this one, Joe, in our list of stories. What did you like about this story?
Yeah, I think that, so just quick background, California this week passed a law basically saying, basically putting restrictions on what you can consider people in the gig economy. Maybe you have to consider them employees in certain instances. It feels like they specifically targeted Uber and Lyft and the like in these cases. So in general, I don't live in California. I have certain political views that probably make it seem like I'm not very friendly to the gig economy. But Uber's response
is typical, isn't it?
Yeah. Uber's response was super interesting because they basically said, we're not going to consider our drivers employees because they are not integral to our business, which I think was very telling of the future of Uber and ride share and other kind of delivery services, which is we don't plan on relying on people. We're going to have a fleet of autonomous cars very soon. That's going to decrease the cost and the overhead and the headache for us. So we're not even going to comply with this law. I assume that they're going to roll out their autonomous cars before the fight over this legislation is concluded.
Yeah, it might be. I think that they're being very optimistic there, but never mind. What do you reckon, Kim?
I couldn't read deeper into the article because I don't have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. It cut me off. But the concept, what I didn't get was, okay, so California is saying that these are employees, not 1099s. But everything I understand from my Uber drivers, because I use Uber and Lyft a lot, fits completely into the 1099, which is they can turn off their availability any freaking time they want. And that's the biggest thing, if you look at the IRS rules, is who has control of the employee.
Right. Well,
The employee,
changed their state law. California already has a stricter state law than the federal definition in terms of who counts as an employee.
but can you do that?
States
I mean,
can
I would be
almost
like-
always pass stricter laws about stuff than the federal government.
But
yes.
doesn't that usually go to the Supreme Court and get overridden, which is why some southern states...
It depends on what it is.
have
The existing
abortion.
California law about... Now, I mean, for your federal taxes, that may not make any difference. But for your state taxes, they can certainly...
for the
decide.
tax purposes. Okay.
Right. And for other things, I think about requiring benefits and so on. And so the thing that seems to be changed here is not simply the kind of existing law about, does the person have their own equipment, can they set their own hours, that kind of thing. But this question of, are you hiring them for something that is the main purpose of your business? Versus, are you hiring somebody to, like, remodel your office or set up your website, which is more of what we're dealing with, but your actual business is something else. And so it's interesting that Uber is trying to argue that basically giving rides is not our business, or rather having people give rides is not our business. But until they don't have people to do it, I'm afraid that argument is pretty specious. But that's Uber.
I think it's interesting if you look at like something like Upwork or Fiverr, would they be subject to the same law, right? Because Upwork, the core of their business is not whatever people who are hired on Upwork to do, right? The core of their business is to provide a way for freelancers to get gigs from people who need the money. What if Uber could probably argue, well, I mean, we're not providing the rides. We are providing a mechanism for other people to provide rides.
If you've got good lawyers, they can argue pretty much anything, and they may or may not be successful at it. And as long as you have enough money to make the lawsuit go on and on and on, you can tie things up in court for a long time. But there was a survey the Freelancers Union put out a couple of months ago, asking people about these type of laws. California's not the only state, and how do you as a freelancer feel about it, and is it likely to affect you? And it's kind of like, well, no, it's not particularly likely to affect me because I have a business with a bunch of different clients. And I mean, that's another thing that trips people up. If you are somebody's only client, you are much more likely to be, to have authorities come in and say, dude, you are an employer. You need to pay benefits for this person. You need to pay, payroll taxes. You need to pay whatever. With things like Uber and Lyft, there might still be the question of, well, how much of their income is coming from that, and how much of it is coming from something else. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad law, because we've seen lots of situations where companies, and frequently in California, where companies will lay off employees, rehire them as contractors, and basically make them do the same work for less money and no benefits.
Well, that's that's the perfect example, but that you could pass a law to make that much more difficult. I just thought that, like what Joe said, I think Uber could have responded in a much more adult and a much better in their own defense than the way they chose to. But that, to me, it was typical Uber. It was they've always had that tendency in how they respond to criticism in this way. What do you reckon, Adrian?
We have our own kind of like legislation up here in Canada about Uber and insurance and a whole bunch of stuff going on in terms of, what they can and cannot do. I do have a response to what Joe, or just a question to what Joe had said earlier, because Upwork, which I use a lot, by the way, and if you don't use it, Upwork's a great service. They just provide a mechanism for freelancers to get in touch with clients and provide the service that they're very good at doing. If Uber was to make that argument, then what I might say in response was, but at least on Upwork, freelancers have the opportunity to decide what their rate is, as well as what the requirements are. Uber does not provide that option to their freelancers. Everything is controlled except for essentially the pickup and drop-off process. They even control the route to an extent. Do you pay the money to
Uber, or do you pay the money to the driver? Because there's that question.
There's
too.
also that question. So,
but it's the same for Upwork, isn't it? You pay the money to Upwork, and then
they put it in an escrow, which is they put it in escrow, which is the big difference. So they don't technically have the money. It's in a lawyer's bank account somewhere. And then it gets paid out to the freelancer, and they take their commission percentage. Is essentially how that works. But that would be like my one question. And in Canada, our employment laws are very strict in that, the independent freelancer is widely thrown around in our own economy here in Toronto. But if you were to go to an employment lawyer and say, hey, listen, I've been working on these hours for this company as a freelancer for X amount of 10 years, right? And I've never received benefits or anything, but they just fired me. Can I do anything? And they're just going to say, absolutely, you can sue the hell out of them, because even though your contract says independent contractor or freelancer or whatever, it won't hold up in court, because the way that at least our laws are structured here is that if you operate on the same schedule for X amount of time, it doesn't matter what it says in your contract, you're still considered an employee. So at least if that fight were to be here, then the government would probably win this fight.
I think that would be under that control of hours. And Sally, you pointed out a really big one that is here in the US, and that is, are they your only client? If I'm a contractor and I have 50, I'm self-employed. I think most of you guys are self-employed. You've got 10, 20, 30 clients. That's different than if you're, quote, considered a contractor and you're just being hired as a contractor by one person.
So if you work for Uber and Lyft, then I guess you'd be exempt, huh?
I don't know.
Which could lead to a really interesting situation where each company was encouraging the drivers to drive for the other company as well.
Exactly.
And then we get up to the point of Walmart offering their new employees applications for public assistance.
Yeah, we're not going there. It just sounds
well, you've got Walmart on the list of articles,
we can go there then. It sounds
nice segue.
It sounds like a feast for the lawyers. I'm going to go on to the next story.
Nope. Hold on. Nope.
Oh, well, I was going to let you start with the next story, but no, if you want to say something, go ahead.
I actually do have some thoughts on this, and this is the one story that I actually wanted to comment on. Because as Sally said, what happens a lot with this type of law, with the independent contractor, the things that Uber has going for it is the people bring their own car, they bring their own insurance, they can work for other people, but as Adrian said, they encourage Lyft. You'll often see Uber and Lyft drivers, you'll see people with the same stickers on their car. I didn't realize that both those companies encourage you to go work for the other company. But in a way, that's
they don't. Sally was being
that was my speculation, is how they would avoid this kind of stuff. But
well, if that is, then that's like collusion to keep people from being branded as employees. But I want to say something too that you alluded to earlier, Sally, how a lot of people are they're employees, but then they're terminated and then rehired as contractors. And I want to talk about this as it's more of erosion of workers' rights. It's been happening for about 30 years. Now, when I worked in the bakery, we used to deliver wedding cakes all the time. I delivered dozens of them myself, but we stopped doing that. And the reason why is because if you're on the clock driving a car and you get in a wreck, and if you're hurt or if somebody else is hurt, who's at fault? The company's at fault, not you. But if you're an independent contractor, it's shifting all of that responsibility and all of that burden back onto you. So this is the thing that I don't like about the gig economy is instead of having delivery drivers for pizza or anything like that, how it used to be, now it's all being shoveled off to DoorDash. Grocery delivery used to be that there were drivers when I worked in the grocery stores and the internet was, fairly new, early 2000s. They had delivery services. Now it's all through Instacart. And this is a way for companies to circumvent having to be liable for employees on the clock. They shovel it off to, people like you and me with a car. And now all the burden and all the financial responsibility and insurance is all on us. It's a way for them to wash their hands. And last thing too, like what you said, Sally, I saw this happen as well. I don't like how corporations manipulate everything and put it all back on the people because it's like digitally aided feudalism. And last case of this I saw was, in the warehouses here in California. They had a central warehouse. It was a supplier warehouse in Tracy, California. And there's a bunch of Teamster drivers there. And they all had, 15, 20, however many years. They all fired them all. And Safeway, basically, they hired a second company and said, oh, this is the company that handles everything. And you have to rehire and you start your seniority at 0 if you want to do this. So one, we're going to screw you out of your pension. We're going to screw you out of all your tenure, all your vested time, but also all of the responsibility is on this third party, which is actually just them, but it's just like another shell company as a way to avoid responsibility. This is the way it's been going, pretty much since the 80s. So, this is the one thing that I dislike about the gig economy. So.
Fantastically said. I agree with every word of it. But there we go. On to the next story. Incident report misappropriation of WordCamp funds. Who was the one that posted this one? Was it you, Joe?
That might have been me, yeah.
Yeah. So what's this about? This sad story of...
Yeah. Basically, it was discovered that one of the organizers of a WordCamp, I don't think the WordCamp nor the organizer has been named, but this person was essentially embezzling money away from the WordCamp Foundation. I think it was about $7,000. And once kind of the foundation figured it out, they launched an investigation. They have asked for the money to be repaid, and if it is not repaid, they will work with the local authorities. So I posted this because, first of all, it's the first time I think in the tenure of the WordPress Foundation, the community team getting involved in actually helping organize and fund WordCamps. But I just like the way that they handled it. There's been a lot of discuss. I'll let John make that point. My main thought was I thought it was interesting that it happened. I liked the way it was handled. And I'm wondering how stuff like this will be prevented in the future. I'm also wondering if anybody's gotten away with it in the past. Like, $7,000, it's pretty greedy. That's if you're going to go for stealing money from somebody, that's quite a noticeable amount. So not that I'm endorsing that, but I just thought.
No, I never got that impression from Joe. John, what did you think?
It's really interesting. And they didn't name and they didn't prosecute or anything like that. They're giving them a chance to make restitution. I don't know which WordCamp this is at. This could be literally anywhere, and it could be literally anyone. I don't know how I feel about this. I hadn't really thought about it up until like this very minute, but and maybe it's because you said embezzlement. It just triggered something in my mind. There's people that go to jail and get felonies for embezzlement that are they embezzle a lot less, and there's no chance to make restitution. So I just want to say that I think this highlights a need for some sort of governance in the WordPress project, and some sort of structure to how these meetups and WordCamps and all this money is changing hands is actually controlled, because it's a lot of money, it's a lot of people that are in charge of it, and to be quite honest, I'm surprised this hasn't come up before.
Yeah.
There was one case before several years ago where somebody, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but they said they were misappropriating and they just pulled their license. It wasn't $7,000. It wasn't such a big deal. And then one of the comments, there was kind of a reference back to that case.
Oh, right.
That could be a felony.
But it
yes.
was like a misappropriation.
Well, it's
what it was you're not allowed to make money off of it, and it had to do with who they hired, etc. The thing that surprised me the most about this was, if you're getting a grant, in my experience, when I got any type or worked with a company who had any type of grant, you already had to go back and list, give them that list of expenses, where the money came from and where it went. And according to the article, they found out about this because somebody complained that it wasn't being done right. So if we're giving them a grant, shouldn't we already have all the receipts and all of this? And so there shouldn't be $7,000 just in thin air?
And I mean, I haven't organized a WordCamp, but
I have.
yes,
No,
I mean,
I have.
but some of you have, and presumably understand, depending on what part you work with,
It's a load of
understand something a little bit more about what kind of reporting you do or don't have to do. But yes, it does seem a little surprising that it would take a while to notice. But yeah, this discussion and the discussion about what happens if there's an issue with one of the community team deputies have kind of both come up at the same time. And so the community team is really thinking about, we need some guidelines about this. We need, and Morton alluded to it last week, this is an issue of governance, where we don't want to be just deciding on a case by case basis. We need to have policy in place about, what happens and how do we decide, and so on and so forth. And because even though, it would appear that most people in the community are pretty honest, or at least that if they're seeking to do something dishonest, they don't choose a WordCamp as the vehicle for it. There's going to be cases because we're humans.
Yeah, I'll give you a tip, listeners and viewers. I had a reasonably large business in the UK, and I used to have a bookkeeper. But every quarter, I used to have, in the US, it's called a CPA. In England, it's a chartered accountant. Every quarter, I used to have my chartered accountant check over the accounts of my bookkeeper. My bookkeeper always hated the chartered accountant because they were always trying to take over everything the chartered accountant did. The chartered accountant hated the bookkeeper because they wanted to do all the bookkeeping and charge me a ton of money. So they both hated one another. So it balanced one out. And then we had somebody checking. It's when you got one person controlling the financial checking and you just trust them, you're going to be bitterly disappointed. I just thought I'd give that as a tip, that you need two people checking because you tend not to do it yourself because it's not your strength. But relying on one person to do it, you're going to be bitterly disappointed at some stage. I just thought
there's a reason that a lot of nonprofits require 2 signatures on checks.
But I found that system for 20 years worked quite well because they always hated one another because they were always competing against trying to get more services. So, Adrian, got any thoughts about this?
I'm just going to agree with you. Is get 2 signatures on the ticket, because I've never had a personal experience with that kind of situation personally. There have been several businesses that come in and out of our door over the years who have experienced extreme strife on account of the person in charge of financials taking advantage of the trust that was bestowed upon them to do their job. So I'm just going to agree with you. It's like, if you can unless you are really good with your own numbers and you are that one person you entrust with making sure that your financial status remains in the black, then great. If not, then having the 2 signature check is certainly the best way forward.
There we go. We're going to go for our break, folks. And when we come back, we've got some other good stories. And we'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I think it's been a good show so far. My pronunciation has been as bad as ever. But I think we covered a broad spectrum of stories so far. But on we go, listeners and viewers. On to number 4. WordPress page builders. Do we really need them? I thought there was an interesting article. Who shall I select? Let's go with Sally. What did you... Oh, no, Adrian. Let's go for Adrian. Sorry. Adrian, what did you think of this one?
Yes, we do, is what I'm going to say. I use Elementor, and I really like it. Our sponsor is Brizzy, and they're a page builder. So, yes, we need them for the sake of the person paying for this show. So, yeah.
They're not paying me that much. It's just, regrettably, but I do appreciate their support. It was very nice of them.
So anyway, in all seriousness, Gutenberg is on its way. It's almost there. There's lots of development, and there's a whole community like dead set on making it freaking awesome, which is great. Until then, I'm going to stick with Elementor because I find it allows me to do a lot of things quickly. There's at least like 5 or 6 like super big ones on the market now, including Brizzy, Elementor.
Can I ask you a quick question, Adrian?
Yeah, go for it.
But if Chris was here as well, and I'm going to ask that, but you own a plugin, so a service and a plugin. Has it not made the whole building a successful plugin business a little even more complicated because you've got to integrate with all these leading page builders to some extent?
To some extent, yeah, it has been. So, for example, we offer integrations for Gutenberg. B, Elementor is actually comes installed. There's Divi. Thrive doesn't offer an open API to integrate anything with them, so there's not for them. And then we get a lot of complaints from people saying, "Why doesn't it integrate with Thrive?" And I'm like, "Well, they don't let us." So that's a little bit of a hiccup. But by providing all of those integrations, you're also just adding value for the end user. They have the tools that they like. And they have the workflows that they enjoy working on. So we just have to. And that's kind of just the state of doing business for as a plugin for the WordPress community these days. Fortunately, most of our tools are completely back-end, and the only really integrations that we require are the form builder and integrating with all of the different form solutions that exist for all of the different page builders. So that's essentially the only onus on us. So that's not that bad for Chris and other more front-end facing like LMS plugins and stuff like that. It's a little bit more convoluted. Chris has gone really deep into the deep end on the whole Gutenberg platform, which I think is awesome. And really,
also he's pushing his because he had a third party introduce
the Elementor integration as well. So they've gone really deep into those two, which are, Gutenberg's obviously comes pre-installed with all WordPress, and Elementor is like 3 million active installations these days. So it only makes sense that they're going for kind of like the 2 big players or the 2 big builders at the moment in terms of support. But I think we do need them for the time being. It just makes getting up a website without any of the limitations that I'm sure Joe is going to talk about in terms of Gutenberg or what he already talked about. It removes a lot of those limitations and just makes it easier to kind of get up and running as quickly as possible. They're also pretty cost effective.
Yeah, I was going to move it over to Joe. I was looking at a page builder, a third party. I think it's called Tyndall.
That's a dating app, Jonathan.
I'll never get up too old for that. Forgot what that is. I'll leave that to Adrian. Sorry. The dribble that comes out of my mouth, it's terrible. Joe, I apologise. So what did you think of all this?
Well, do I personally need a page builder for a website? I don't.
Well,
I
you might
don't.
do for quick knock up. You might.
Right. But do I need a car to drive to my parents' house? Technically, no. It will take me days to get there because there are 3 hours in a car. But a page builder helps me do important things faster so that I can focus on other important things. I mean, I'm really responding just to the headline, right? Because if you read the article, it's like pretty wishy-washy. It helps somebody. I think it actually helps somebody answer this question. And it's not just like a clickbait, like, do we need them? It depends. So do we really need them?
No,
No, but they're
I
helpful.
I just want to give you some insight. Is that there is some fault in this brain of mine occasionally. Obviously, it's a clickbait title, and I did read the article, and you're totally right. It's a little bit wishy-washy, but I just thought I was hoping to move the conversation because you got Gutenberg, and to me, it's painfully going.
Yeah.
You know, the pace, and then you got all these third parties. So I have clients come to me, should I use Gutenberg or shouldn't I? Or should I use a page builder? My present position is you still use a page builder, use Animate or Beaver Builder. Divi World is it's enormous, but it's totally alien to me. I know hardly anything about the world of Divi. And I asked the CEO numerous times to come on the show, and he constantly he refuses. He don't even reply. So I know nothing about it, but it just seems a bit of a mess at the present moment. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of stuff to choose from. Gutenberg, if you're looking for something to do, like what Beaver Builder's my page builder of choice. Beaver Builder or Elementor. If you're looking for something like that in Gutenberg, you're not going to get it. It's either going to take hours of handwritten code or using one of these page builders. So if you're looking for a fast, beautiful design, yeah, I think a page builder is the way to go. At least for the foreseeable future, right? 5.3 is going to start breaking down the walls of Gutenberg and only the content editor. But we'll see where that goes because we don't know who's at the helm. Well, we don't know the kinds of decisions that are being made for the Gutenberg project. We don't know how long these phases are going to take. Phase 1 took forever, like 3 times as long as I think they wanted it to. And as we put that into more areas of WordPress, it's going to increase the complexity. So we'll see what happens. Today, I think you still need a page builder if you want to do some cool things without writing a bunch of custom code.
What do you think, Kim?
You're muted, Kim.
You're muted, Kim.
I'm muted. My cat Peekaboo was making a bunch of racket back here. There's a squirrel behind one of the hurricane shutters that are still up.
All right.
And my cat's going crazy. So if I muted, it's because she's banging. I'm with exactly what Joe said. If you want to do fancy landing page layouts without a bunch of stuff coding, you got to have a page builder. And I started out a Beaver Builder. I now do Beaver and Elementor. I think they're great. I guess my first look at the article was, do we even need the article more than do we need the question?
Yeah, like, how many times have I seen this article before?
Me too.
Yeah, but I just I totally agree with the panel, but it's just the painful, and I think a lot of it to me is that Matt.
I don't know. I suppose I'm just weird, but I mostly find Gutenberg less painful than using the page builders. And the thing is, with any of these tools, there is a bit of a learning curve, right? You have to, the more options you have and things you can create, the longer it takes to get to know which ones are which are, but I've built some very nice things using Beaver Builder, but I don't use it enough to be really familiar. So it's just like, all right, which module was that again? What is it? Where do I find it? How do I search through this? And there's a little like so the more things, and it's kind of like, well, how, what have we set up to do? How elaborate should it be? For an awful lot of what I need to do, there is already a sufficiency in Gutenberg, and for some things honest to God, it's faster for me to write the code. And that's not true for everyone. I wouldn't want to say that, like, just because page builders are not my favorite thing, they shouldn't exist, because they let a lot of people do a lot of things, and some people are just really happy to work with them the way that they work.
I use it as a rapid, rapid production tool with working with the client, and sometimes the client, we leave it because the client wants the freedom, or sometimes we then transfer it and code it up. It just depends, really, Sally. But I do agree with you. But I use Beaver Builder and Elementor a bit like Joe, and because I love the Beaver Builder crew. They've been quite generous to me, and I like the Elementor crowd. So it is what it is. What do you reckon, John?
Okay. So, everybody has their own workflow. And I'll call on not just my own experiences, but just my experiences back in the day, subcontracting a couple of years ago. Most of the agencies that I did subcontracts for from 2012 up until a couple of years ago, most of them used a theme, and they would just child theme it, and especially if the budget was lower. Yeah. One shop that I used to do a lot of work for, they insisted like bespoke custom theme like each time. That was maybe that was like one of their selling points. I'm not sure, but I've seen other agencies like here around town. Some of them use page builders. I know at least like one agency here, they do some pretty innovative stuff with Beaver Builder. But I think for me, whenever I come to a site, I'm always kind of like looking at it with the insider's eye. And, not all the time, but a lot of time, I can say like, that's a Genesis site or that's a Divi site. But I've seen some people do some really innovative stuff with Divi. Not everybody, but, I've seen it. I think it all comes down to whatever your workflow is, whether you're using Gutenberg, whether you're using Elementor or Beaver Builder, or whether you're writing bespoke code. It all comes down to how skillfully you can implement both design and code to make it look like something unique, or put your own flourish or your own style on it. Not everybody can do that. So page builders, it's I understand why people do it a lot. It's to save time or to have a workflow that they can hand off to their clients, and they can easily make their own pages from there. But for some clients, that's too much as well. So I think it all depends on your comfortability with the workflow, the type of clients you have, the type of budgets that your projects have. All those factors come into effect. So there's no really one right answer to this. It just depends on what's best for you and your client base.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, John. I think that's a great insight, because I think in this panel, and definitely listeners' views, there'll be such a spread of different client bases, different scenarios, that the idea that you can impose one ideal solution is delusionary. I think what you just said, that's fantastic. Panel, I'm thinking of dropping story 5 Walmart takes, but I think it's a pretty weak story. I like to go on to story 6 and then give us time for the panel recommendations. Is that okay with the panel? It seems to be. So on to story 6. Carole Olinger joins WP&UP. And I think, Sally, what did you think of this one, Sally? Because I think it was you.
Right. Well, we'd talked about Carole when she was stepping down from, I think it was WordCamp Europe, because of various issues she'd run into. And
I'm probably going to go to the Europe next year, actually. I'm going to go
right. And so I thought that it was...
It sounds much nicer than actually WordCamp US. Actually, going to Portugal sounds a much nicer idea, actually. So.
But so I was just sort of pleased to see that uh, Carole had been hired for something, and that this was good for her, but also that the organization that she joined is all about um, mental health support within WordPress, and that kind of and encouraging self-care and the kinds of things that often people don't get or are afraid to ask for. So I think that's it's a good project that they hired her for. They're doing some fundraising by riding 3,000 kilometers on their bicycles, which is like not something I can even begin to imagine. But that arriving for WordCamp 2020 Contributor Day, to raise awareness of positive physical and mental health within the WordPress community. And so I hope they are superlatively successful.
Well, I think it's not a fantastic set. Remote working in front of a computer for hours. And if you don't want, if you don't get out in the sunshine or do something, I think it can end up being a very unhealthy lifestyle. What do you reckon, Joe?
As someone who's been getting into the sunshine and doing more physical activity more often, I can totally vouch for that. I hate running, but the elliptical has been my friend. And I'll just say this. I was in another WordPress Slack where we were talking about kind of hobbies outside of WordPress, and more than one person responded that they don't really have hobbies outside of their work. And that made me immensely sad. And I hope that doesn't sound smug, but I'm lucky enough to find web development and programming as a hobby as well as work. But I have other interests too. I love Disney. I smoke cigars. I'm interested in a lot of other things.
Naughty boy, Joe.
I know, it's very bad.
You're Joe with his cigar photo.
I'm a New York Italian. I don't think I have a choice. But I like doing stuff away from the computer. At the gym, it dismays me to see people like texting while they're doing leg presses. I don't get it. I don't even bring my phone to the gym. All of this is to say that I think that WP&UP is doing something really fantastic. I love Carole. We met, I think, like a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and we like immediately became friends, and she was very welcoming, and I'm really glad to see her.
I never met her.
She is super cool. Yeah. Super cool, and I'm really happy for her, and I think that this is going to be a great partnership.
Yeah, she seems a bit of a star. I never met the lady, but I just get a good vibe from her. What do you reckon, Kim?
I was to say, I actually don't know her, and I wasn't there at the last discussion, but I was the same. I loved the article, and I love the importance, and I'm all with Joe. I think the years in IT that I had spent and knowing people that was everything they did. They worked all day long in IT and they went home and they did nothing else. I have way too many other interests to just do one thing. That would, I think, kill me. So I love that they're kind of shining that light on the bigger picture of self-care that's important to all of us.
Right, Adrian, admit it. Do you see any sunshine, or are you?
I see my fair share of sunshine. My other half
Canada as well.
Mandates date night. So I get enough. And so the way that we run our company, at least here, is we operate 8 to 4. Those are operational hours, Monday to Friday. I come in and it's like I have a job, even though this is technically, my company. But Drew Mitt and the rest of the team in here, they come in and we have our mandated hours, and then we go do whatever the hell else we want, because we're not technically, we don't work remote. I have the office. People come in, and that's how we decide to work, because of all of the reasons that I stated. Working remotely, I can't, it's I can do it some days, and I do it sometimes, but most of the times I like coming into the office because I have a sense that I am separating my at-home life from my work life. I have that separation. So I find that that's nice. And I'm totally with Joe on the whole cigar thing. Scotch and cigars is my favorite night. But yeah, so, congratulations to WP&UP for just, totally, changing the perspective on, remote work is the greatest thing since sliced cheese. It's not for a lot of people. And we need to even if your only hobby is coding and WordPress, you can still take that hobby outside of your house. You can go to the meetups, you can go to the WordCamps, you can still do the only thing that you really, really love to do. Just put it in a different context. And if you're feeling, like you're trapped inside the walls and you're not getting out and it's like Uber Eats and Netflix every day, then it's time to just change your surroundings. Even if you're just doing the same thing, a change in surroundings could mean the world.
Sounds good to me. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't know who Carole was until she was stepping down from, WordCamp Europe. But from what I can see, she's, a prominent figure in there, and it seems, like she has a lot of personality. I think it's good.
There seems to be a lot going on in the European WordPress area, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't really speculate because I'm not too close to it, but yeah, there seems to be some stuff. But yeah, WP&UP seems like they have a lot of people coming on board. Not super familiar with everything that they do. I know that they provide some resources as far as like written content on managing mental health and physical fitness and different things like dealing with stress. So I think that's good. So, the more people who are aware of it and destigmatize some of these issues, I think that's better, because I think it's okay for people to admit that they're, either under stress or they have mental health issues or, they just need help. I think that's totally fine. So I think the more prominent people that are on this project, the better.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's go on to our recommendations of the week. Do place them into chat, please, panel. It really helps me with the show, get the show notes done quick. I'm going to start with Relay That. It's a AppSumo offering. So if you go to AppSumo, you can get this particular package at a fantastic discount, which I did. I coughed up $49. And basically what Relay That does, you've got a client and you're doing the website, but they ask you to start knocking up graphics for all these social media properties, and they all have different graphic ratios. You can get your graphic designer to knock it up, but even for them, it's a pain. So this tool, your graphic designer or yourself can work with this tool, and it seems to. I haven't used it in anger because I just bought it a couple of days ago, but I had a quick look at it, and I'll be playing with it. It really helps you get all this, all these graphics, all these different social media properties done in a professional way. So I think that's quite good news. So let's start with Joe. Joe, you got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so I'm recommending a similarly named thing, but it's very different. My favorite podcasting network is relay.fm. They have lots of really great shows on there. My favorite, I think, is Cortex with CGP Grey and Mike Hurley. Every September, they raise money for St. Jude's. It's at least here in the United States, it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And one of the founders of Relay FM, his son is a survivor. So they're raising a ton of money for St. Jude's, and I love the podcast network. I love what they're doing. A week from today, on September 20th, they're doing like a 6-hour live podcast-a-thon. So if you're, I'm spending a bunch of money this month on the new Apple gear because I'm a shill and a sucker. So I got the new phone, I got the new watch, and I'm going to, but on that same token, I'm going to take some of that money that I'm spending and I'm going to donate it to
So your
an
watch,
amazing cause.
does that come with a stand?
Does the watch come with the stand? It does not. I'm not going to get that XDR monitor thing, but I think it's a really great cause from a network I respect.
I'll put the link into the chat with you, Joe.
Yep.
Kim, got anything you want to recommend or push to the listeners and viewers?
Well, I may be the last person to the party here, but thanks to a project you and I helped you with earlier this year, Jonathan, I was exposed to WP Fusion, and I don't do anything with my LMSs without it now. It has been able to tag, based on LMS, what I'm doing with my online courses right into my CRM. And it's just been fantastic. And Jack, if you're listening, I owe you the review. I promise it will be coming. But it's just been, it's expanded so much from what just my regular LMS and my membership were allowing me to tag and get to my users, and has just made it so much faster.
Oh, it's a great product, and he sponsored the show. Hopefully he will decide at some time to sponsor it again. And he's a great guy, isn't he?
He's wonderful.
He's a pleasure to work with. But put it into chat so I don't forget.
I did.
All right, thanks. Adrian, have you got anything you want to push or plug that's come across your radar?
So last week I made a recommendation for using the Facebook Business Messenger chat on your website. If you have live chat, although I didn't really provide any sort of clear instruction on how to do that. Over the weekend, last weekend, I just decided, all right, well, I need a more effective way to communicate that. So I actually built a plugin, and it's currently in the WordPress repository. So if you have a Facebook business page and you want to have a business chat on your website, I created a plugin. It's called WP Simple Chat. It's WPSimpleChat.com, and you can go download it there. And it's a totally vanilla Gutenberg site if you're interested in looking at what that might look like, since you had the whole page builder conversation. But it's free. It's there. It works. You can change the greeting message dependent on if users are logged in. If you can change whether you want to show it if users are logged in. You can change the greeting message dependent on the posts that they're looking at. So if you have a landing page and you want to say, have questions about X product here, you can do that, and that's super cool. So a little bit of customizability there, a little bit different than the ones that are currently on offer in the repository. So that's a treat for you guys if you're looking to have live chat free from Facebook on your site.
I just love it. I just knocked out my plug-in and I put it in the repository, on a whim. I just love
and
it.
it apparently got approved quite quickly too.
Yeah, did you manage that?
So I built. I actually talked about this almost on the second live panel I was on. I was like, WordPress should have an extended core for plugins that allows kind of like the continual kind of like sameness in the back end, so admin pages look the same and options and all that stuff. So I built one, and I used that to build all of the admin UI and all of like the basic functionality, and I ported it from my current plugin Groundhog, which has a lot of that stuff pre-built in there as well. So I built an extended core, which is all like pre-approved and stuff. So just it was a matter of, hey, listen, plugin name, plugin, and I got it almost approved immediately.
There you go. I think that answered it. Sally, well, make sure you put it into chat, will you?
I did. It's in there.
All right, Sally, got anything you want to?
Yes, I would like to recommend the Revision Path podcast. It is an interview podcast that focuses on showcasing the best Black graphic designers, web designers, and web developers from all over the world as they describe themselves. I had this kind of mini revelation a couple of weeks ago that if I actually cared about diversity, I should start following a wider range of people and finding out more and making connections and trying to, making an effort. And so this has been fascinating to listen to, and also kind of nice, just like, oh yeah, all these, these new people doing cool things that I never heard about. So
they have a lot of episodes.
They do. And it's like, okay. Well, one of the things it shows me is how possible it is to exist in this general space for a long time and not see any of these people. And that's not such a good thing.
No, they've got more episodes than me.
I don't think so. You have a lot of episodes, but they have a decent quantity of episodes. They're at 275.
Oh, they're just beginners. They're just beginners, Sally. You know.
I don't know how
They're
long
not
I don't know how long they've been podcasting either.
Right.
But you are very consistent in putting out those episodes every twice.
I've become I think the A to Z of plugins is even their consistency. I have to have him. I forgot the name of the host, the lead host. I'm going to have him back
John
on.
Overall.
Have him back on the show because he is the granddaddy, isn't he? So, John, got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, definitely. The guy you're thinking of on A to Z, that's John Overall.
Yeah,
he was on like one of your early episodes.
Fellow Canadian.
yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Yep.
Victoria. He lives in Victoria.
He does, yeah.
But my recommendation is this is a YouTube channel that I recently came across, Mike Winnett, exposing the entrepreneurs. He has a podcast.
I gave you that.
Oh, but anyway, like he has one channel on here on his YouTube. It's Not Another Dickhead with a Podcast.
Is he talking about me?
I don't think so. It doesn't appear to be in iTunes, but you can find it on Spotify and iHeart and some of these other ones as well. But yeah, go check it out. It's interesting. It's
I've got to ask you, what is the synopsis of this episode? Another dickhead that got a podcast.
He interviews different people. It's like more long form. Like the regular YouTube videos are shorter, but these are more like long form interviews with different people. I think there's one episode in here where it's one of the people that he's interviewing is actually one of these entrepreneurs. And it's just interesting. But most of the time it's like other people who are like, here's how the scams are run. Or
that was the episode I watched. They are the cockroaches of e-learning. These people, aren't they? Really, they give e-learning a bad name. So, but he goes through the process, and I'm going to sound very English snotty here, but hopefully the listeners and viewers have got to know me a bit. It seems almost that Americans have got some great strengths, but they just seem to be attracted to these type of con artists, aren't they?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because people have an inferiority complex, and we're very much like keeping up with the Joneses type of society, where we're always comparing ourselves to one another. And, so being successful or seen as successful is like super important to a lot of people. And I've been caught up in that too, so.
I think we all have.
Yeah.
It's like the latest ClickFunnels Facebook advert. And I'm not going to mention the person. They got this individual that's seems to be financially hugely successful, and on his private jet, and he's knocking up his latest landing page to get these suckers into his funnel and sell them some impossible dream which they will never be able to accomplish in 1,000 years. And he's just saying, get onto ClickFunnels and do it and make Branson even more money. It's rather sickening, but there we go.
Well, I got to say, it's easy to look successful when you're a big real estate developer. I mean,
I forget where I saw it, but there was some discussion about how, a lot of people who were like pretending to be extremely rich had actually just temporarily rented, cars or whatever. And I know
Tai Lopez.
Yeah. I have friends of mine who now live in Las Vegas, but they used to live in Los Angeles, and they're like, yeah, this is LA. People will like go to test drive an expensive sports car and like drive it up to some meeting with somebody to impress them.
Yeah. It's also non-English, isn't it, Sally? Isn't it really? Isn't it?
Yes. All that self-aggrandizement is very anti-English.
It's just not tasteful. But England, unfortunately, is becoming more like America, but a more Mickey Mouse one. I'm ranting now. Let's end the show. Joe, thanks for joining the panel. Hopefully, we'll see you on a regular basis. Joe, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me on the internet at casabona.org. I am Jay Casabona on most social networks, including Twitter. And my podcast is howibuilt.it.
And I hope you enjoy your Apple devices that you splashed out on.
I certainly will.
Kim, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me on Twitter, at Kim Shivler, or easy to find me, kimshivler.com.
I've got to tell you, Kim, you put when you were saying your squirrels were banging away, that kind of put an image into my mind. I just couldn't stop laughing, really. But there we go. Adrian, sorry, Adrian, how can people find out more about you? What you're up to?
Well, if you are looking for marketing automation and CRM, but you don't really want to go for a software as a service solution because they're too expensive, and you'd really like to just keep everything in WordPress, then we provide a free plugin called Groundhog with 2Gs that you can use to do all of that and more. You can go to groundhogwith2gs.io to download our free plugin and start being able to collect contact information, send emails, start funnels, and all of that good stuff directly from within your WordPress admin.
And Sally, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I am at Sally Getch on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is where you find the pictures of the cats. And you can find me at WPFangirl.com and at EastBayWP.com.
And Sally's had a health emergency in one of her cats, but it's much better. And soon as the cats appear on the show, my ratings go up. So I'm all for the cats. John, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, glad to hear that Kiki is doing better. But you can find me at my site, lockdownseo.com. You can also check me daily making YouTube videos on SEO. It's channel John Locke SEO. You can also search hashtag Lockdown SEO on the YouTubes.
What episode count are you up to now?
I think we're at like 424 or something like that.
Oh, you're getting close to me, John.
Getting close.
Right, thanks, listeners and viewers. We'll see you next week with another great panel and hopefully another great selection of stories. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.